Dear people watching and listening, Assalamu alaikum. Kindly like and share this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please support my channel by contributing to my Patreon account so that I can continue making the audiobook series. The book continues with part 1, which tells in detail the conquest of Egypt, which happened under the Rashiduncaliphate from 639 AD to 646 AD. This conquest brought an end to the Roman Byzantine reign over Egypt, which first began in 30 BC. Egypt was also conquered and occupied by the Sassanid Empire from 618 AD to 629 AD, from the Byzantines before it was reconquered by Emperor Heraclius. Start of Chapter 9. The new capital of Egypt. The Muslims liked Alexandria. It was a splendid city and had a thrilling effect upon the simple Arab of the desert. It also had a lovely climate which, with the gentle breeze of the Mediterranean, made it one of the nicest places to live in. The Arabs fell for Alexandria. Amr did too. The more he saw of it, the more he liked it. He adored the buildings and houses of the city and, practical man that he was, thought there was enough accommodation for everyone here. He wished to stay and make the place the main Muslim cantonment in Egypt. Consequently, he wrote to the Caliph and asked for permission for the Muslims to take up their abode in Alexandria. Umar was averse to large bodies of water. He did not like them. Over the past few years, while Muslim conquests spread far and wide, he had continually deterred his generals from going across wide rivers. When Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas anhu, conquered Ctesiphon after having got across the Euphrates and the Tigris, Umar refused him permission to follow up the Persian retreat for fear that the Muslim army in Iraq would leave two mighty rivers behind it. In fact, he ordered Sa'd to go back to the desert side of these rivers to establish cantonments for the Muslims. And thus, Kufa and Basra were founded west of the Euphrates and the Tigris. The Caliph had written to Sa'd and to the governor of Basra, "Let there not be water obstacles between you and me, so that if I mount my riding beast to visit you, I do not have to dismount except at your place." Only once had Umar relented. In 20 Hijri, while the siege of Alexandria was on, he had submitted to the pressure of Muawiyah, governor of Damascus, and given permission for a naval operation against the Romans. In consequence, a Muslim force was transported in a flotilla of 20 vessels from the Syrian coast towards some objective in Rome, probably some spot on the southern coast of what is now Turkey, but the entire force came to grief and Umar wished he had stuck to his earlier resolve against sea-borne operations. He swore this would never happen again. The aversion to water was not, however, shared by all his fellow countrymen. The Arabs, especially those of the Yaman, were a seafaring people and known to be amongst the best seamen of the time. They sailed their vessels to India and Ceylon and Indonesia and down the east coast of Africa. But Umar did not like water. That is why, upon reading Umar's request for permission to stay in Alexandria, the first question he asked of the courier who had brought the letter from Egypt was whether there would be water between him and the Muslim camp at Alexandria. The courier replied that there would be, especially when the Nile was in flood. The Caliph promptly wrote to his commander-in-chief in Egypt, "I do not wish the Muslims to take up their abode where water intervenes between them and me, in winter or in summer." Amrbinalaas read the letter of the Caliph. Then he read it aloud to his officers. He asked them where they should set up their permanent camp in Egypt. "Let us return, O commander, to your tent," they replied, "so we shall be close to water and to the desert." They used the word fustat for tent. The word has several meanings, including city and a gathering place, but the meaning associated with the word here was tent, and the Muslims were referring to Amar's woolen tent which he had left standing in Babylon. "Let us return to the place of fustat," said amrbinalaas. Amr left 1,000 men under Abdullah bin Huzaifa to garrison Alexandria, and sometime early in 21 Hijri, 642 AD, the Muslim army struck camp and marched to Amar's tent, Fustat, the new capital of Egypt. The dove and its young ones, for whose sake Amr bin al-As had left his tent standing in Babylon with orders that it was not to be taken down, had flown away long before. But the tent was still there when the Muslims returned from their campaign of Alexandria. Around this tent, the Muslim army would take up its quarters and build a new city, and because the new city would grow up around the tent, it would be given the name of Fustat, the tent. Very soon disputes arose among the Muslims about who should build where. Apparently some plots were nicer than others, and individual vied with individual, clan with clan, tribe with tribe, for the choicest spots. Everybody wanted the best. To solve the problem, Amr appointed a committee of 4 Muslim chiefs to study the requirements, coordinate plans and settle disputes. This the 4 chiefs did admirably, and the construction of the new capital got off to a smooth and efficient start. The first structure to come up in Fustat was the mosque, which was to become famous as the Mosque of Amr bin al-As. Its site was selected on the tent of Amr, and it was so placed that the mihrab and the pulpit came to be located on the exact spot where the tent had stood. The site of the mosque as then chosen was in an area covered with gardens and vineyards, and Amr personally supervised the laying out of the Qibla, that is the direction of Mecca. The mosque was built quite large, almost 100 feet wide and over 50 feet deep. The mosque was started and completed in 21 Hijri, 642, and it was a beautiful mosque. The first time that it was used for the congregational prayer, there were 80 companions of the Prophet present in the mosque, including such highly venerated persons as Zubair bin al-Awwam, Abu Zar al-Ghafari, and Ubadah bin as-Samit. The Muazzin of Amr bin al-As, who called the faithful to prayer at this mosque, was also a companion, one named Abu Muslim al-Ghafaqi. The mosque was given a pulpit for the Imam, that is the leader of the prayer, but it was unusual to have pulpits in mosques in those times. The Holy Prophet ﷺ had constructed one in his mosque in Medina and would mount it when addressing the populace, but the others did not use pulpits in mosques. When Umar came to know about this, he disapproved of the construction of the pulpit and wrote to Amr, "It has come to my notice that you have built a pulpit by means of which you stand above the shoulders of the Muslims, which is the same as your standing with the Muslims under your heels. I command you to dismantle the pulpit." Amr chose a site for his own house, next to the gate of the mosque, and built a main house plus an extra one adjacent to it. Other companions also took plots and built houses, noteworthy among them being Zubair, Ubadah, Abu Zar, Abu Ayyub Ansari, the son of the Caliph and the son of Amr bin al-As, both named Abdullah. Amr even earmarked a large plot of land near the mosque for Umar, and wrote to the Caliph, "We have selected a place for your house near the mosque." Umar was too big a man to think of acquiring property for himself, and wrote back, "What can a man living in the Hijaz do with a house in Egypt? Let it be used as a market for the Muslims." The plot was consequently turned into a market, a slave market. All houses in the new capital were of one story, and this fitted in well with the egalitarian spirit of the desert Arab. But one man built an upper story on his house, which was resented by his neighbors, who got the feeling that he could look into the privacy of their homes. They complained about this to the Caliph. The man in question was no common soldier. He was Kharija bin Huzaifa, one of the champions, that is Hazar Mard, chosen by Umar for the campaign. But that did not entitle him to break the normal custom. He may have been equal to 1,000 men in combat, but he had the rights of only one man. It has come to my notice, wrote the Caliph to the commander-in-chief, that Kharija bin Huzaifa has built an upper story. Perhaps Kharija wishes to see into the private apartments of his neighbors. When you get this my letter, demolish it. And salutations. Kharija lost his upper story. So the Muslims settled down and built Fustat. The city was built east of and contiguous with Babylon but overlapped the old town on its northern and southern flanks. As it grew, it absorbed Babylon within itself, and the entire city became one large metropolis. Soon after their return from Alexandria, when the spring and calving time had come, a large part of the army was dispersed with the animals to various districts of Lower Egypt for ease of procuring food and fodder. The tribes and clans usually stayed together, but farming was not permitted to the Muslims because of the Caliph's policy that the land should be left in the hands of the locals so that they could pay revenue and taxes for the Muslim treasury. One man, Sharik bin Sumai by name, did start a farm in spite of the orders of amrbinalaas, who then informed the Caliph about the matter. The man was sent for and given a good dressing down by the Caliph. Even Giza, lying west of the Nile and famous for its pyramids, was settled by the Muslims, though not by the wish of the Caliph or the commander-in-chief, and only with their reluctant acquiescence. The way it came about was that on the return of the army from Alexandria, Amr placed a few clans at Giza as a protective force. While the Muslims built their new capital east of the Nile, these clans would stay west of the river to watch for the approach for any Roman forces undiscovered by the Muslims or disloyal elements from Alexandria who might try to surprise the Muslims. These clans came from many parts of the Arab world and there were even some Ethiopians among them. They all fell in love with the place where they were located. Later in the year, when the construction of Fustat was progressing well, and Umar felt that he was now in no danger from any unlocated enemy, he called upon these clans to cross over and join the main body of the Muslims. The clans did not like the idea of the move and would not come. They sent their commander the message, "We have advanced here in the way of Allah. We are not going from this place to another." Umar did not wish to force the issue. The clans had fought well in the war and deserved the right to choose the place of their residence. So he wrote to the Caliph to inform him of this incident and explained how the whole thing happened. Once again Umar was confronted with the situation he abhorred, troops being positioned on the wrong side of a big river, something he had fought against for years. But he also saw the compulsions of the situation. Though not being close to the troops, he could act with more detachment. "How could you agree to your men being separate from you?" he wrote to Umar. "It is not right for you to have a river between yourself and a single one of your men. You will not know of dangers that befall them and will not be able to go to their aid, and they will suffer an unpleasant fate. Get them together with yourself, and if they refuse to come to you and are obsessed with their place, build them a fort." Umar spoke to the men. Again they refused to change their location. He told them of the Caliph's orders about the construction of a fort at Giza to give them protection in case of enemy threat. They did not want this either. "Our swords are our forts," they proudly assured their command. but Amr had a fort built all the same. Its construction began in 21 Hijri and was completed the following year, which corresponded to 643 AD. Giza was one of the best districts of Egypt, and these clans lived happily at Giza, as indeed the Muslims lived in Egypt. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had said, Giza is one of the gardens of paradise, and Egypt is Allah's treasure upon the earth. Then there was the hill of Muqattam. Along the east bank of the Nile, from deep in the south near the Sudan, runs a range of hills which ends in Cairo at the hill of Muqattam. In pharaonic times, the top of this hill was used as a lighthouse with a beacon to guide boats plying on the Nile. But at the time of the Muslim conquest, it was just a bare hill, brown in color and with rocky promontories, about 3 miles east of Babylon with a low spur running towards the town. It was a bare but pretty hill and people would go for walks on it. Maqauqas and amrbinalaas would often meet and talk and walk together. One day Maqauqas asked Amr to sell him the hill of Muqattam for 70,000 gold dinars. Amr was taken aback by the unusual request and the high price offered by the barren and worthless hill. He said he would ask the Caliph. In response to Amr's letter, the Caliph wrote, Ask him why he wishes to pay you what he wishes to pay you, for it cannot be farmed, no water issues from it, and it can give him no benefit. Soon after this, Amr and Maqauqas were walking along the top of Muqattam. Amr turned to the priest and said, O Maqauqas, why is this hill of yours so bare? There are no trees or bushes on it, as on the hills of Syria. Maqauqas replied, We have found in our books that this hill used to have more of trees and bushes and fruits than the other hills. And Muqattam son of Misr, son of Baisar, son of Ham, son of Noah, used to stop on it. Then came the day when God was to speak to Moses, and he announced to the hills, I am about to speak to one of my prophets from a hill from amongst you. When the hills heard this, they all became bigger and loftier, all except this one. It shrank and became smaller. When God saw this, he asked the hill, Why have you become so? And the hill replied, In awe of your glory, O Lord. Then God ordered all the hills to give him some of the plants which grew on them, and Muqattam gave generously, gave all that grew upon it. So it became as you see it now, and God said to it, I shall compensate you with the trees of heaven. Amr wrote this story to the Caliph, who then instructed his general, I do not know of the tree of heaven except for the faithful. Make it a graveyard for the Muslims. Bury on it those Muslims who die before you, and do not sell it to him at any price. Amr did so, and was later himself buried at the foot of the hill. But when he told Maqauqas about the Caliph's decision, the archbishop became very angry. What is this? He burst out. It is not for this that we made our treaty with you. To calm down the old man, Amr earmarked part of the land at the foot of the hill for the Christians to use as a cemetery, and had a clear boundary drawn between the Muslim part and the Christian part of the hill. What started here as a cemetery was like a trickle which in course of time turned into a flood. For today the entire space between the old city and the hill of Muqattam is a vast zone of graves, aptly named the City of the Dead. End of chapter 9.